On one of his birthdays, which actually for him, back many years ago now, was birthday 45, but it could have been birthday 45, 55, 66 for that matter, Charles Swindoll wrote the following: "Today I just turned 45, 55, 66. No big deal. Just another stabbing realization that I'm not getting any younger. I know that because the cake won't hold all the candles anymore. And even if it could, the frosting would melt before I'd be able to blow all of them out. So my kind and thoughtful secretary suggested another approach. She gave me a birthday card depicting a fragile old codger tottering beside a cake covered with candles, and on the front it reads, 'Don't feel you're getting old if you can't blow out all the candles.' And on the inside it says, 'Just beat them out with your cane.'" Between early worship and 11 o'clock worship this morning, toward the end of the Sunday school hour, the children of the church and the youth of the church had a surprise birthday party of sorts for me. And it was down in the youth lounge. And they provided me with one of the very best presents that I could receive as pastor of this church and that you could receive as members of this church. Because there were so many children and youth that were down there of all ages. That's not all that typical for a downtown church, but this is not a typical church in so many ways. So I want you to know that one of the best birthday presents that I received was just the number of young people who were present, not only during that Sunday school hour, but for children's sermon and an inordinate amount of children for children's sermon and early worship today. I say that to say, God's got a future in store for this church. And I had the privilege and opportunity of making a wish on their behalf this morning. And it's really a wish on all of our behalves that all of them will eventually become Christians and follow Jesus Christ, but love the church as much as you do. And what a great birthday present that was. Well, by now you've probably figured out that I'm not 45 or 55 or 65 for that matter. I, as of 6 o'clock this morning, became 66. I've got certain friends, Bill Thurman's one of them, who when you turn a certain age, like 66, he says something like, "Remember, you're now entering your 67th year." Well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate that, so very, very much. But I'm 66. That's my number. What's yours? That number for me originated when my oldest grandson Baxter was 3 years old. And we were having a birthday party. It was my birthday party, and my children and their spouses, and had 3 grandchildren at that point, were gathered around the table, and they brought out the birthday cake. We do that, except it wasn't a birthday cake, it was cupcakes. And mine was coming with a lit candle. You couldn't get 66 candles, even on a big cake, that wasn't going to work. And so instead, my wife had secured at a party store just the numeral 6 and another numeral 6. Well, back then it was 61. And Baxter looked at that, and after I blew out that 6-1 figure, said, "What's your number, Big Bob? What's your number?" And it was kind of amazing because we took a little bit of time going around the table and we asked everybody, "What's your number?" "Well, it's 3. What's your number, Deborah? Well, it's less than yours, Bob. It was like 6-0 at that point, and everybody had a number. Well, what's your number? Let's do a little poll. How many of you out there this morning have a number like mine or higher? 66 or higher. So you don't have to give the exact one. Okay. How many of you have a number this morning, let's say 50 to 65? Anybody? Okay. Well, what about 40 to 55? Got any of those people? Y'all look young for 40, 55. That's pretty good. Well, what about, let's say 20 to 40. Where are my 20 to 40 people? Where are the adolescent folks, 13 to 19? Got any of those? Yep, we do. Some of them over in the summit worshiping right now, but yeah, you're here. And well, what about 12 and under? How many we got? They were up here just a few moments ago. Well, I do that survey to say, one, you can be thankful to God that you are in a downtown church where not everybody's 66 plus, and not everybody's 13 to 19, but you have a really good chronological distribution of God's children of all ages, and that is good and appropriate and healthy, and ought to give you so much faith and hope in this church's future. Sure does for me. But I want you this morning, as I think about my number, to hold on to your number, and using Psalm 90 as a background, what can we learn today about our number in life? First thing that we can learn about our number is that it's not like God's number. The psalmist starts out by talking about God's eternity. Lord, you've been our dwelling place in all generations, even before creation, even before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth. From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. It's hard for us human beings to fathom the fact that God is not confined by time. He doesn't have a chronological number like you and I do. God simultaneously is present and knows what's going on in past, present, and future tense. That's why he's omnipresent. He is God. He is eternal. He is infinite. But you and I, this side of heaven, are finite. We are mortal. We have a number. And the psalmist uses several images to remind himself and all of those who would later read this prayer of that fact. Lord, our days are kind of like a dream. They will vanish quickly. They're kind of like a flood, which eventually will sweep things away. They're like grass that, though it might be renewed in the morning, eventually will wither and fade. We've got a number. The good news about all that is that we serve a God whose number is infinite. It's beyond infinity. He is God and we are not, and he gives us a number so that we can get to know him and get to know one another on a better basis while we're here upon this earth. So I want you to hold on for that for just a moment. Another thing I want us to take from Psalm 90 is that whatever your number is, whenever your birthday happens, it's a pretty good time to do some evaluation. Why did you reach your number? What have you done prior to your number? What do you plan to do, hope to do? What's God calling you to do if you are blessed to go beyond your current number? For all our days pass away under your wrath, O God, verse 9. Our years come to an end like a sigh. The days of our lives are 70 years, perhaps 80 if we are strong. So teach us the wisdom of numbering our days. One translation, paraphrase, commentary, use your number, your birthday, as a time of evaluation and reflection. Chuck Swindoll makes a distinction between deadlines and lifelines. And birthdays are lifelines. Deadlines are ways that we mark out the calendar. They can help us be more disciplined, our use of time. But God brings about birthdays not as deadlines, but as lifelines. So once a year, God builds in this particular numbered day so that we can make an annual appraisal of how we're living life. Not only the length of our lives, but the depth of our lives. Not only to tell us that we're growing older, which we are, but to help us determine if we are growing older gracefully, which God wants us to do. So, how long has it been since you utilized a birthday as a lifeline? How long has it been since you really took time to take a good look at your life? To ask some important questions about your life. So let me ask a few, if I might. First of all, be sure that you slow down long enough to take stock of where you're going. Maybe it's been a while. So how are things going in your marriage? How are things going with your children, your grandchildren, with your parents? How are things going with you and your friends and your company? How are things going with you on the job? How are things going when you hit a birthday number with your relationship with the church, of which God has called you to be a member of? How is your relationship with God Himself? So Swindoll provided some reflection questions, and I'll add just a few to those if I might. Dare to ask yourself, as you ask God to help you number your days, ask yourself some hard questions. Here are a few of them. Am I really happy, genuinely challenged, and fulfilled in life? Really? Am I just going through the motions? Am I really happy, genuinely challenged, and fulfilled in life? In light of eternity, remember God is eternal, am I making any consistent investment for God's glory and His cause? More pragmatically, is what I am doing today going to really have that much impact and significance 20 years from now? Is what I'm so worried about and caught up in and trying to get accomplished today really, from the perspective of eternity, even from the perspective of 25 years from now, how much difference is it going to make? Is the direction of my life leading me toward a satisfying and meaningful future? Can I honestly say I'm in the nucleus of God's will? Am I spending some sufficient time with my family, with my church, with my God? Teach us, O Lord, to number our days, to use our numbered days, our birthdays, as a time to evaluate our lives. Socrates put it this way: the life which is unexamined is really not worth living. The psalmist says, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom and be wise. Have a lot of fun on your birthday. I already have, planning to have some more. But somewhere in the context of number 66, I want to pause long enough to take a hard look at where I've been, what I'm doing now, and where God is calling me in the future. You know, churches have birthday numbers too. This church had a birthday not all that long ago on January 27th, and it was January 27th, 1875. So it's been a while. I think we're something like 144 years old, if my math is halfway accurate. And so anytime that there's a birthday, and remember we celebrated special anniversaries like number 125, and the church celebrated back before that number 100, and you know, it won't be that many years, 'cause we'll celebrate 150, but a good time for the church to ask some questions. Are we being the people that God calls us to be as the church? Do we really have enough faith that the God who has helped us in ages past already has a future in store for us, and He's with us in the present moments to help us get there? Some good evaluative questions for all of us to ask. Whatever your number is, whenever your number occurs, let me encourage you to take some time to read Psalm 90 and to dare to ask the question, if you're wisely using the days that God gives to you. Another thing that I like to mention just briefly whenever we talk about numbers and birthdays is that we need to lighten up a little bit about them. You know, be glad you made it this long. God's given you this life. You know, we try to do this thing like 39 and holding. That's a myth. Did you know it? That's just a flat out myth. And we perpetuate that anytime you go to the drugstore and get a prescription. Have you ever noticed that? Before they'll give you your prescription, they will ask you, and when is your birthday? They don't want to know the year. All you got to say is 210. And lately I've been saying 210, and I can't change the 1953 after that. You just can't do that, you know. We're not 39 and holding. I wasn't 65 and holding. I'm 66 and counting. What's your number? What's it been? What's it going to be? But lighten up a little bit, and when you do, remind yourselves of some things that are often said about getting a little bit older. Here's a few that I've somewhat used over the years, some a little bit different. Now that I'm older, now that I'm got a higher number, here's what I've discovered. I started out with nothing, and I still have most of it. I finally got my head together, and now my body is falling apart. If all is not lost, where is it? I wish the buck stopped here. I sure could use a few more in my retirement account. It's hard to make a comeback when you haven't been anywhere yet. And if God wanted me to touch my toes, He would have put them on my knees. And these days, I spend a lot of time thinking about the hereafter. I go somewhere to get something and then wonder what I'm here after. So, all kinds of things. And you know, we've heard of the serenity prayer before. God grant me the serenity to, you know, accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. But depending on where your birthday is, as it gets a little higher, somebody has paraphrased that into the senility prayer. God grant me the senility to forget the people I never liked anyway, the good fortune to run into the ones that I do like, and the eyesight to tell the difference. Well, when I have officiated and preached funerals, and I've preached quite a few, if the funeral is someone who has brought joy into people's lives, and you run into people like that, I always like to refer to my favorite proverb, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a downcast spirit dries up the bones. Thank God for the gift of your life and be good medicine. Be a cheerful heart. for all those people who know you. I want to talk to you just a moment that whatever your number is today, if your number is just a little bit higher tomorrow, that's bonus time. Bonus time. According to the National Institute of Aging, the average lifespan of a person born in 1900, okay, 119 years ago, 1900, you know what it was? 49. That was the average lifespan. Today, because of advances in medicine and diet and fitness, hygiene, all that kind of stuff, a person that's now 50 years old, on the average, can expect to live 33 or so more years. So just the fact that you and I were born when we were born is a blessing. We didn't earn that, you know, that was a gift from God. So several years ago, after I had my heart surgery, 2008, they would not let me drive for 7 weeks. That happens when they split your sternum open and repair your heart, and I'm glad they could do that for me, but I couldn't drive. Have you ever been in a situation where you've always been driving and you can't drive? You lose your independence. You got to depend on somebody else. And so after I finally got home from the hospital, the first week or so, I depended upon Deborah and John Robert to drive me. I had to go to rehab, cardiac rehab, 3 times a week. Had to go to all these doctors' offices visits, and I just wanted to get out, so I was dependent upon them. But you know, after a while, I was doing well, doing pretty good, and they needed to go back to work, so they did. But I still couldn't drive. What was I to do? Enter my 78-year-old mother, Mama Sybil, into the scene. She moved in with us. And thank you, Mama Sybil, for doing that. Of course, about 3 years before, she had had open heart surgery and a quintuple bypass, but she was still driving. So there we would be jumping in the car, and fortunately, whatever it would be, she's behind the wheel, and I'm over here. And we're going down Harrodsburg Road and New Circle Road, and then, oh my gosh, Nicholasville Road, that's where I had to go. And Mama Sybil is, you know, peering over the dashboard. She's kind of going like this. And I'm over here with seatbelt really tightened. And you know those little mended heart pillows that they give you when you have heart surgery? I am grabbing that thing, not because my heart hurts, I'm scared to death. And you know, she finally says, am I scaring you? And I say, no, I'm lying to my mother. And then I said, yeah, you are. But we made it. No wrecks, bless her heart. But we spent a lot of time when she moved in with us for a while to talk about life and what had happened, and to talk about bonus time. She was 78. She had had heart surgery. She was still going. She's still going today. She's going to be 90 this summer. Bonus time. I was 55 then. Hey, I've made it to 66. Bonus time. Grateful for the time that God gives me. Don't know for sure exactly how much more time I have, but all the time He has gifted to me, and to you, as a matter of fact, is a gift. Mother and I used to say, what if we had been born 100 years before? And then we said, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We would be at Sunset Memorial Gardens or Lexington Cemetery. But the fact that we were fortunate enough to be born when we were born means that compared to a lot of people throughout the course of history, you and I have been given some bonus time. So here's the deal. What are you doing with the bonus time that you got? What are you doing with every day that God gives to you? There's no mistake that you're here today. That's part of God's plan for you, whatever your number is. And your number may get higher and higher. We don't know exactly when our number is going to be up, so to speak, but we do know that as long as we are here, God's got a purpose for our lives. What are you doing with your bonus time? One last thing about birthdays, whatever your number is, Psalm 90 is basically this. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, O God. This is verse 14. So that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Teach us to count our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. That was the psalmist's way of saying, remind us that we don't have forever. Not this side of heaven. And we don't either, you and I. So what you're going to be doing for your family, and what you're going to be doing for your church, and what you're going to be doing developing the gifts that God has instilled in you, we better be doing it now. Somebody asked an evangelist once, when should you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? He said, the day that you're going to die, right before that. And they said, well, we don't know when that's going to be. He said, then maybe you ought to give your life to Jesus today. Story I told from the pulpit, I'll end with this morning. Will Willimon is a noted theologian, Methodist minister, bishop of a Methodist conference in Alabama, but for a long time he was the chaplain at Duke University. And I think I said, they probably need a lot of chaplains at Duke. No, I didn't really mean that. I haven't gotten over that Christian Laettner thing. I'm working on it. I really like Duke more than I used to. I really do. But so he's a chaplain at Duke University. That chapel, you walk in it and it's worshipful. If you haven't been there, it's an incredible place. So he was a chaplain, and while he was doing that for a while, he was kind of pastoring this little rural church in North Georgia, and somebody that was a member of the church had a relative that died, and so Will Willimon and his wife Patsy decided that they would drive over to another town for the funeral to support this lady that was a member of their church. So he and Patsy, on a hot summer day, jumped in the car and drove to this little rural community over in North Georgia, and it was a Baptist church. It was a little Baptist church. And he said he walked in, they had a seat, and all of a sudden they literally wheeled the casket in, and the preacher almost ran to the pulpit, and he said something like this: "It's too late for Joe. He could have straightened his life out, but he didn't. He could have made some important decisions, but it's too late now. I wish Joe had given some better thought to the time that he had upon this earth, but it's too late for him." And everybody's gasping. What's this guy doing? But then he goes on, "But it's not too late for you. You still got today. Give your heart to Jesus today," he said. And this guy was fuming and sweating, and it was crazy. On the way home from the funeral that day, Will Willimon looked over to Patsy's wife and he said, "I can't believe what I've just experienced. That was as non-pastoral as you can be. That was manipulative. That was cheap. That was awful. What a comfort he was not to the grieving family." And Patsy said, "You know, you're right. I didn't like it either. It was manipulative. It was cheap. It was non-pastoral. I don't know how much he really helped the grieving family. But the worst part of all," she said, "is that everything he said was true." What's your number? How are you using it? Teach us, O Lord, to number our days, that we may have a heart of wisdom.